It's 101. I think there's a couple other folks that are going to join. I'm Alan Cobb, president of the chamber, and one of the co-chairs was Shelley Kimlinger, who's a regent, board of regents member. She is traveling the wilds of Western Kansas, and she's going to be calling in, but not sure about coverage. And of course, that's not sure about coverage is not unique to rural Kansas, as we all know. So we're going to start just as a welcome to everybody. Thanks for everybody for attending virtually. Reminder of our vision and values: driving a robust economy with the highest educated and skilled workforce in the Midwest, plus a couple of other states, which are competitors. Although having the best in the country is not a bad thing to strive for. Value concepts: education, equity, equality, opportunity through innovation, boldness, future focused, researched informed decisions, responsive to economic drivers, led by industry needs, acting with urgency, scalable and sustainable solutions. And as a reminder, which I have to be reminded frequently because the task is so large, we decided to start our focus on IT computer science, which in my mind, I know what that is. And there's probably a specific definition of both of those. And the reason we started with those skills, there's a lot of skills that are cross industry, but that's certainly one that every industry needs, whether it's retail or manufacturing or financial services, let alone IT companies need those skills, and more folks that have those skills. So I frequently get off and start thinking about manufacturing, et cetera, but we're going to get there soon. And I appreciate everybody's time and commitment to this effort, which is very, very important. And we are going to see some results out of this. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in with introducing Shonda Atwater, a new member of this Kansas team from the Department of Commerce. Had lunch with Shonda last week. So my time continuum is a little off, and brings a wealth of knowledge from the Metropolitan Kansas City Community College about registered apprenticeships and training and externships. I know you've only been on a week, and I should probably reserve judgment, but I think we're very, very lucky, 2 weeks, very, very lucky to have her. And then I'm kind of wondering, why didn't we hire her? I say why wasn't she hired 10 years ago or 5 years ago? But we're not living in the past. We're moving forward in the future. So Shonda, the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes we have on the schedule. But if you need more, and there's probably going to be questions, we can adjust. I have a hard time believing we're going to go to 4:30, although You never know. It's a long-winded group.
Yeah. Well, golly, if I need 10 minutes to introduce myself, then I need to probably get in touch with my speech instructor in high school. My name is Shonda Atwater. I reside in Tonganoxie, Kansas. I've been with Metropolitan Community College for 5 years, managing, running, growing the skilled trades registered apprenticeship program. I've worked with unions and non-unions alike. I've served on, I've gone through a couple of national training programs on registered apprenticeship, and I know a lot of the players nationally, which is really helpful in bringing those strategic solutions to the Kansas region. I am excited to finally be working in my home state, so that's a bonus, I feel like. I do have, I have my undergrad from Colorado State, but I do have a master's degree from K-State. So I don't know if this name will sound familiar, but Dr. Barry Flinchbaugh was actually on my thesis committee. So that's kind of awesome also. I serve on the Kansas City Chamber Workforce Executive Committee. I'm going to say it wrong, but whatever, you get the point. Greater KC Chamber. And then I also have worked with and served on the board of the Kansas City Agribusiness Council for a long time. I've spent 10 years actually in the meat industry, working with manufacturers and boxed beef, working in grocery stores and a little bit with the checkoff and whatnot, but I hail from skilled trades family. My dad's always been a welder. He's been in construction his whole life. He's the smartest guy I know. And I still believe to this day, had he had a chance to go through an actual registered apprenticeship program with some sort of certificate attainment on the other side of it, his retirement years would look significantly different. So with that, I'm just really excited to be jumping in. I think I've gone head first into the deep end of the pool. My team is a little shook at this point, but that's okay. That's what I'm here for. If I were in a past life, I had a previous employer talk about BHAG. Does anybody know what a BHAG is? No? Yes?
Big,
Trent
hairy,
knows.
audacious goal.
Right? Thank you. Big, hairy, audacious goal. I would say that would be to double our registered apprenticeship numbers. When you've got both, Vice President Biden, President Obama, President Trump, and now President Biden putting, I think the last number I saw was $1 billion, one with a B, behind it into registered apprenticeship. We know that there's an opportunity for Kansas to get some of that funding and help to decrease the brain drain and increase our workforce and our skills in this area. Some focus areas for me initially is, veteran hiring, veteran registered apprenticeships, justice involved is a huge area of opportunity, getting women back into the workforce. When you have a 3.2% unemployment, you really have to start looking at some underserved populations that there are opportunities for hireability. I think after that, definitely engaging our K-12 is huge. I don't necessarily put that at the front of my forefront because I know that my colleagues, Stacy Smith and some of the folks over at KSDE are doing a fabulous job of doing internships and trying to figure out the registered apprenticeship model in the youth space. And so, I have to prioritize kind of where I'm headed, but to also streamline our processes. I think we've got a really great base to work from, but if we're going to hit the numbers that we want to hit, we really need to ensure that our processes are in place. And then also really get a well-trained voice all headed in, the same direction. I think there's some legislative action we could potentially look at doing to create some excitement around registered apprenticeship. And I sat down and I talked to Secretary Tolan's government affairs person last week, not yesterday. And I'm terrible with names. I do apologize. But what's really cool about registered apprenticeship is that there's an answer for everything with registered apprenticeship. There's so many things that it can entail and it can help answer. And when you're talking about the work-based learning spectrum, it's at the very highest. As we build out, that spectrum and really develop, externships and tours and internships and things like that, we can all be headed towards a really fantastic long-term training program that can help really increase ROI for businesses across the board. It doesn't matter if they're in manufacturing or IT or healthcare, what space we're looking at. There's a lot of ability for us to really grow this and decrease the brain drain for Kansas. Does that help? Questions?
It helps a ton. And just with your knowledge and passion for what we're all trying to do, you're going to be a huge asset. Are there questions, suggestions? Suggestions. You have more knowledge than anybody else on this call, I think. But feel free to throw those out, or everybody. Her schedule's, I'm sure, full, but I'd encourage everybody to have a call or lunch or coffee with her. So I think we're fortunate to have this kind of focused view on registered apprenticeships and some of the other things that are kind of like it. I guess that's what I'd say. So, and it's great. It's great to have. I don't want to be so parochial, but have a Kansan who probably has a better understanding of our state and some of the differences across geography and industry than others might. So, questions, comments. the floor is open.
Alan, I just want to say welcome, Shonda. I've heard your colleagues already talking about how excited they are to have you on the team, and we are pleased to be learning from you as well. So I just have you keep in mind how this Advantage Kansas group might be of assistance to your efforts, and also what the Kansas Board of Regents might be able to do to help as well. So as you're exploring and learning, I'm a member of this group and the Board of Regents, and we'd be glad to be part of helping to move this forward.
And I see that Scott Smathers is on the call. He and I have coffee set up. Scott, I apologize. I thought it was this morning. And I had sort of a moment of freak out and realized it was a few days from now, I think next week. So. Right.
Look forward to it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. This thing doesn't work right. I am actually here. It just doesn't. I haven't, I don't understand. I click on, sometimes I'm there, sometimes I'm not. So anyway.
You are.
Yeah, that's funny. We've all had more than a few experiences of that. I should give a warning. I have adopted a new dog. I should say my wife and I, and they're both in this room with me. And I don't know, with our other dog, I'm taking a risk. I decided not to crate them. And they'll probably pop up in the screen. Yes, one's right there. There's one. All right. Well, thank you, Shawna. Everybody looks forward to working with you. And I am very, very excited to have this expertise on board with Kansas. Next, we have Kristin Brighton, which I think surely everybody's seen her present, but it's still worth having either repeat or new information from her effort. Higher Pass, very visionary on these things that we've been talking about for the last year and a half or so, and she's been dealing with them a lot longer. And she's got a presentation, and she and I talked a little bit ago, but it can't hurt to remind everybody what you're doing and why you were inspired to do this, Kristin, with Higher Pass.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alan. And welcome, Shonda. Shonda and I met like 18 months ago when I was out just kind of getting this started. And I was super excited to hear that she's taken this job, and get me on your calendar soon.
Yes, absolutely.
And I reached out to both Alan and Cindy this morning because I wasn't even exactly sure who put me on today's agenda. And so if somebody knows and has something different they want me to talk about, please chime in. If not, Alan suggested that I kind of run through some of what's new with Higher Pass. I'll probably just do a quick recap for the few of you who might be new. And then I'll leave some time at the end so that we can talk about how Higher Pass can help promote the initiatives of this group. And if there are other ways I can use my expertise to help all of you out. Sound good? Unless somebody has an epiphany what you wanted me to talk about instead. All right, I just got the invite Thursday, so I wasn't quite sure how this all came about, but I appreciate the opportunity. All right, so let me share screen. Just to remind all of you, everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. How about put it in this view? That might be better. Just to remind everyone, this program really organically grew out of a local Chamber of Commerce initiative. I was the chair of the board of our chamber here in Manhattan in 2016. And in that year, we ran a task force to see if our local chamber could do anything else to help our members fill their jobs. And at that point in time, everybody was pulling their hair out, trying to figure out how in the world to find workers when there were 20,000 open jobs on the Kansas Works database. And now we're at like 65,000. So over the last 5 years, this problem has just continued to magnify. But as we were sitting around the table, somebody threw out an idea that I latched onto as the owner of a marketing firm. This idea is that all of us need to do a better job of communicating with parents. We've done a lot to redefine how we do career and technical education in our schools. We're working a lot with industry, but parents have been in many ways left out of the equation, and parents don't even realize all the opportunities that are available to their children. So I took that idea, it took me a little bit of time, but I started workshopping it a couple years later in about 2018, and I reached out to some people at the Department of Commerce, actually as my first call. And I said, hey, is anyone doing this? Is anyone actually looking at how to better communicate and promote these ideas and programs to parents? And does anybody think this is a stupid idea? And nobody dissuaded me from pursuing this idea. And everyone thought it was a missing link to all the work that everybody else was doing. So we pulled together several of you who are on this call and some other local experts together in late 2018, right as we were having the administration change, and started thinking about how we could get something like this off the ground, came up with the name, the messaging, started figuring out a way to get it funded, and then really took off at the beginning of 2019. We determined that we needed to get some private investment to get it off the ground. And so that was our goal in the spring of 19. And we were able to get 3 companies to each pledge a significant amount of money for 3 years to help us get started. And I hate to give up an opportunity to thank them. So Textron Aviation, Stormont Vale Health, and the Kansas Contractors Association were the 3 businesses who really took a gamble on this crazy idea and gave us some seed money to really start to build out the concept. We were all set to launch this right when the pandemic hit in 2020, but both Stormont Vale and Textron were really derailed by the start of all that. And so we had to push pause for about 6 months because we needed them to finish up what we needed to do to launch the program. But late in 2020, we got everybody back on board and excited to move forward. And we turned the website on February 1st of this year. So really, we have spent the last 9 months just really building our brand, trying to get people to see Higher Paths, know what that name is, and start to recognize it and what it's for. So I'm going to just really, really quickly go through. I think there's only a few people on here who haven't heard this before, and then focus on some of the new developments. We were very blessed with the partnership with KSDE this year. They chose to invest some of their ESSER II funds in this program to help us grow faster to promote technical education. So it's allowed us to add some new features that I'll promote here in a minute, including this really fun video series that we've just launched this fall. So let me go through this really quickly. Again, this is not a curriculum. Higher Paths is a marketing campaign to educate parents about all the opportunities for their kids to pursue high demand careers. You all know all the reasons why. We focus on parents because parents are the greatest influence in a child's life. And when I say parents, I'm being inclusive of all adults who are raising children, whether they're grandparents, uncles, foster parents, or whomever. We're looking at adults who are raising children in their homes from birth to age 18. So we focus on, as our target audience, Kansas adults 25 to 55 who have a child in their home. We target parents because we did a research study that allowed us to do some good benchmarking. And we found that 63% of Kansas parents that participated in a study we did in 2019 believe that their child should go straight from high school to a 4-year college. However, when we look at Kansas Department of Labor data, we really only need only about 25% of our jobs require a bachelor's degree. We all know we've got to get more people into those skilled, kind of in that gap in between and that post-secondary education, but not a 4-year degree, so that we can better meet the needs of our economy. We also are really trying to address what Shonda mentioned, that brain drain issue, that we know that Kansas is number 6 in the nation for outward migration. More people are leaving by far than are coming in. And the number one reason people are leaving is for a job. And I always say it's easier to keep a client than to get a new client. And that's just the same with residents. It's easier to try to keep and retain our youth that we've invested in and help to raise with good Kansas values than it is to try to get people from elsewhere in the country to move in. So just one more reason why this program is needed. Of course, when you're dealing with parents, there's 2 other key secondary audiences, and that are the children themselves. So a lot of the materials that we're creating, we're hoping that parents will share with their children. And there's other secondary audience would be K-12 teachers and counselors, partnering with KSDE to build those relationships to try to get these materials out into the schools as another way to get materials in the hands of these kids, knowing that not every kid's parent is ever going to engage in Higher Paths, but that might just be a second chance for more kids to get exposed to Higher Paths. Real quickly, our campaign messages are very simple. There are many paths to a successful career. So we talk about on-the-job training, apprenticeships, tech and community colleges, as well as colleges and universities. We talk about your child earning a well-paying, in-demand career without earning a bachelor's degree. And I find myself talking a lot about the fact that just because they get in the workforce after high school doesn't mean they may not eventually earn a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree, that sometimes through their employer, they'll be able to achieve that level of attainment later in life and maybe not even have to take out any debt to do so. And then lastly, we talk about that a child going straight into the workforce or to a technical or a community college program is a success. We want to change any perception that a child who does something other than going to a 4-year college is in any way not as achieved as someone who is. So what we've created is a digital storytelling campaign very much focused on content that we're creating and lives permanently on our website and then is shared and distributed through social media. So we're on all of the major platforms. And so far this year, we have written over 70 stories of Kansans who have started careers through non-traditional means, almost all of them. Some of them do have bachelor's or even master's degrees, but most of them have some sort of a unique way they got into their career path. And every week we publish 2 new stories. That list is constantly growing. We're doing some new things now that we've got so many of them to help people be able to sort them. You can go in right now and sort them by industry. We're going to get to the point where you can search by name because this database is just going to grow as the program continues to mature. So with our KSDE grant this year, we've been able to expand all of the ways we are going out and promoting ourselves just to build relationships with parents and teachers. Certainly, we're running ads on social media just to try to introduce ourselves. We've been able to put up 10 billboards across the state. And I know Alan was telling me he just saw some recently on a trip. I know I was in Kansas City over the weekend and just saw one of them on the way back. But we've got 10 all over the state, including one that just went up in Dodge City last week. So excited to get that name recognition and hopefully get some more people curious to check out what we are. My goal is to mix those up at the end of the year and hopefully maybe we can put some in different locations so that over the course of the next 3 years, we can continue to introduce ourselves to different audiences. We've also created a set of display booths and created a partnership with Kansas Works. So we've created a set of these to go in each of the quadrants of the state, and Kansas Works team will take them when they're at different career fairs and different live in-person events. A couple of our investors have a set as well, so that when they go to things, they can bring it and promote Higher Paths as well. Just continuing to build those relationships and introduce the program. One of my favorite parts, though, of the program that we've been able to add is a series of videos, which we're creating with those ESSER II dollars. The goal of these videos is to introduce elementary school, upper elementary, like 4th through 6th grade, and middle school students to careers they could have in Kansas that they may not otherwise have ever heard of or ever thought about doing themselves. And so right now we are in the process of finishing video 3. The first 2 are on our website. It's right at the top of our website page, Cool Careers. I'll point it out in a second. I encourage you to go back and look at them. These videos are 5 minutes or less. They're designed so that teachers could play them at the beginning of class or at the end of the day, just as they're kind of killing time till the bell rings. And we're hoping that over time, this will become something, they're going to have 1 video come out a month and they'll start getting used to showing them to their kids. Knowing that IT was a great emphasis of this group, we did a introduction to cybersecurity careers for the first one. The second one looked at drones in the construction industry. And we just returned from Garden City when we filmed one about plumbing, really trying to emphasize new technologies and the commercial side of plumbing, that it's not just fixing garbage disposals and sinks. So really trying to get some of the building trades in there as well. What's fun about these videos and challenging for those of us who are having to produce them is finding a child who is in the community of the company that we get to agree to be in the video with us. So we're recruiting young on-screen talent all over the state, and hopefully that allows us to make connections and get people in different parts of Kansas excited. So the first video features Ivan, who lives in Overland Park. The second one features Dallas, who lives in the Topeka area, even though that video was filmed in Perry. And then we ended up with Dylan out in Garden City. So as we continue to build this series, we'll get some young people get some experience behind the camera as well. So we'll have this one out basically planned for 6 each school year. So we'll have a little break here over the holidays. And then after the one that we are releasing here in another week or 2, we're doing one at Textron looking at robotics in manufacturing. And so we're doing that one in February. And I believe we are doing one on radiology tech careers in the medical field in March. Still finalizing the spring one, but very excited at how these are rolling out. We're also working with Stacy Smith's team to do more promotion of the CTE Scholars Program, which gives us a chance to celebrate our exceptional students who have finished a set of requirements through the CTE program. And we're right now, Stacy tells me that only about 45 or 50 kids statewide apply for this honor each year. And he and I have kind of gotten an unofficial goal of trying to get that to 300 kids to be recognized a year by the 3rd year of this grant. So stay tuned. We're going to be promoting that through Higher Paths, running ads from now clear until the deadline in March, and then we'll be creating a video to celebrate the winners that we'll be able to promote statewide. We're also developing a newsletter that goes out monthly to teachers, and we're trying to build a database. So anything you can do to introduce teachers in your neck of the woods to get them to sign up for this is great. The list continues to grow each month, but I know there's a heck of a lot of teachers we still don't have receiving this mailing list. But it just is a compact way for us to send them the cool careers video of that month, or the months that we don't have cool careers videos, like we won't have one in December and January. We're going to promote some of the industry videos that we've created. And then each issue also has 2 articles that we've picked out that we think would be useful for teachers to have read, or that teachers could share with parents, their students' parents. And then we send them 4 of our success stories that they can share with their students as well. All that information is on the website, but we're trying to make it something easy we can package and that teachers can use very quickly. So continually trying to build that list to build more partnerships with our educators. I just thought I'd spend a few minutes running through some of our early results. This was through the end of September. Right now, we're in the middle of compiling our 3rd quarter data. Our 3rd quarter ended at the end of October. But you'll see that, so we flipped the switch in February, and each month we've seen a growth in our website visitors. I hope that, I have a feeling that we're going to have much higher traffic here now in October. September was a big jump up. We purposely didn't spend as much money to promote our sites over the summer, just to be good stewards of our money and really hit it harder during the school year. So we were anticipating those numbers to be down, but I'm super excited to see our October and November numbers. Now that more people are learning about the cool careers videos, I think we're going to see that demand continue to grow. Right now, we're working on, again, still building relationships and awareness, but we're trying to get more dots across the state to show you where people are coming from, who are going to our website, just something we're continuing to monitor. But I'm excited that it's a good mix of urban and rural areas. Some of the smaller towns don't really necessarily show up. They usually get lumped in with their larger city that's nearest to them, but still seeing a good smattering. Hopefully we can continue to see growth in the more rural parts of the state. When we look at who's coming to our site from what information we can glean, we are hitting our target audience. The bulk of the people who are coming to us are in that 25 to 55 age group, with just a few younger and a few older. We're finding women are more likely to visit our website than men, but that's very common for any campaign that really is promoted through social media. I find that almost across the board in almost every industry I work in, so that does not surprise me. Through the end of September, we had reached more than 1.2 million individuals, so unique people, through Facebook and Instagram. Twitter and some of the others don't report that same data, so we know that number is even higher, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it is now after 3rd quarter. So twice a week, we run a personal profile story of someone who has a successful story, how they got to where they are. And I pulled these out for another presentation last month, just to show everyone kind of the smattering and the diversity of stories that we've told. So I picked the most popular story for each of the quarters we've been up on each of the platforms. So you'll see in Facebook, we featured a police officer in Garden City, a secondary teacher in Pratt, a goldsmith who learned as an apprentice from a jewelry store here in Manhattan. For Instagram, we had a paving foreman out of Topeka, a respiratory therapist out of Topeka, and a chef from Junction City. And then Twitter, we had another police officer. The police officers in Garden City, those went really crazy because both the city of Garden City, the police department in Garden City, and Garden City Community College shared those. And it shows the importance of partner entities helping to share information. Those 3, the 3 that we wrote in Garden City all went really strong. So it was kind of neat to see, when everybody works together, how many people you can reach. In May, we had another nurse story out of Stormont. That was our top Twitter. And then an executive out of Wichita for Textron. I already promoted our founding investors. So just to plug for all of you, just to know that we're constantly still on the lookout. We're still looking for partnerships. I think I can safely announce now that Garmin will be joining the program on February 1 at the beginning of year 2. I have another very well-known company that you all would know, but I'm still waiting to get the ink dried on that contract that I'll be able to announce, and hoping to go to a couple more. But we're looking for additional larger businesses who are able to put in the investment to help us grow the program. They get to promote their program through it, and help to underwrite our ability to reach more people through their investments. All of you would fall into this champions category, people who can help connect us to families, educators, and other businesses that could help us get our information out, or who might have stories to help us tell. And then lastly, we're looking for introductions to young people. It's hard to come up with 2 stories a week. Certainly our partnerships with community colleges are starting to grow and starting to get their attention more. And so we're starting to get some out of those relationships. But I'm always up for ideas of ways to make connections of great stories to tell. And certainly the more businesses we get involved as part of their partnership, they get so many profiles over the course of the year. So the more businesses we get involved, the less individuals we have to find. But finding other individuals helps us to supplement. So it's not just about the large companies that are investing in the program. So it gives us a good mix of small businesses, mom and pops, entrepreneurs, and so forth. So with that, I was going to pull up the website, but does anyone have any questions for me while I do that? Like I said, I know many of you have seen that before.
Kristin, would it be okay if we showcase some of the apprenticeship staff at the Kansas Department of Commerce?
I think there's lots of possibilities. And I had worked with Chastity, but I think she was just overwhelmed when we tried to reach out to her over the summer. But we've written one article just introducing parents to apprenticeships, and we had several others. So I think, Shonda, you and I could probably do a brainstorming and come up with all sorts of possibilities. We've really struggled with businesses to help connect us. And that's where I'd love to have your intervention, because I'd love us to be featuring apprentices all the time.
Yep, that'd be great.
So just to show you real quickly around the website, I'm hoping most of you have been there, but here are those cool careers videos, which I'd encourage you to look at. And if you have ways to help share them and get people to sign up for them, that would be awesome. Here are the profiles that we're continually building a new one, putting up new ones all the time. But again, you can search by different industries. And then as you go in them, you'll see we've got a lot more in certain industries than others. I'm really struggling, especially with food service, to get the names that I need. I'm trying to think of a few others that we don't have as many for. Certainly the ones where we have investors are much more built out than others, but certainly continuing to work on these every day. A perfect example of a partnership is Salina Tech heard about our desire for stories, and they already had some existing interviews they had done. And so they sent us like 6 videos that were like 5 to 10 minutes a piece, with permission for us to do an edit of them. And so we were able to put higher pass branding on the beginning, credit Salina Tech at the end, and we edited them down to 1-minute little snippets. So like this Megan story is an example of the type of story that it was a great partnership with Salina Tech. It allowed them to get more out of an investment they already made. And it just cost us a little bit of time to do editing, and we got 6 more stories out of that. So I think there's lots of ways for us to continue to repurpose and build relationships with other partners to help all of us get more out of the media that we've been curating and creating over the last couple of years. And then just lastly, we have built out this Explore Careers section that some of you who haven't been on the site for a while might not have noticed. We have 9 primary industries that we highlight, but we are in the process of adding on some additional information for each of these. So we've reworked these pages so they give parents a lot more concrete information. And the exciting part is we've added activities that you can do with your kids that tie directly into different places you can visit in the state of Kansas, different types of museums, different ways that families can explore. In some cases, we have books or games that you can play that tie into some of these fields. And then right now, my team is almost done. We have created a resource page for each of these jobs. So right here, there's 6 of them. And when I click on Find More Jobs, you'll see even more. So we're going to have it very soon that when you click on air traffic controller, you get a page just about being an air traffic controller with specific information about job growth and salaries specific to Kansas, a link to the Board of Regents degree stats page where you can search for programs in that area, really just trying to make it much more useful for parents. It also will link to any profiles that we write or have written of people in Kansas working in those jobs. Certainly we don't have profiles for all of them yet, but as this continues to mature, hopefully eventually we will have those for most of them. So that's just another way we've been able to reinvest some of our ESSER2 money to continue to grow and expand this database. Or just resources. You know, there's lots of career programs, there's Zello and Naviance and all of those. And those are great. And in fact, Stacey and I had a preliminary meeting last summer with Zello about seeing if there's a way to connect it to this site. But what I really like about this is we're really tying it specifically to Kansas and to real stories. And so I'm hoping that maybe connects with kids in a different way. And there's nothing that says that if somebody sees a job on this, they couldn't go into Zello or Naviance and research it even more. But hopefully we can at least give them some basic information and ties to Kansas-based educational resources to help keep those kids here in our great state. Let me see. And then in the featured employers section, this is the part that will continue to grow. Right now, I just have my 3 founders, but as our new ones are added between now and February, we'll have a whole nother row of additional businesses. And as you go into each of these, they have their own sections with a video that either they've provided or we created, just depending upon their investment level, that introduces them as an employer. And then there's all sorts of other information, including links to their own job pages, and example careers and so forth, so that people can learn more about what it's like to work at that employer. So this site is really getting big after just 9 months. I can't imagine how big it's going to be a year from now. Oh, the one last thing I didn't point out that I wanted to point out, and then I'll quit talking, is our blog. So we produce 2 profiles a week that we put out through social media, but we also publish 1 article a week. Cindy, Shelly, a few of you Stacy have worked with me to write a blog about a topic that we collaborated on. And so it actually has their pictures at the bottom on various topics. And we produce about 1 of these a week as well. And we use paid social media to get it in parents' news feeds. So for example, this one right here is the one that I worked on with Stacy to promote the CTE Scholars Program that really explains it in a very simple way, connects them to the resources they need to apply. So if you have things, and Shonda, this is where you and I can talk, because we had about 6 ideas about apprenticeships. We just need cooperation and partnership with your team. But you'll see, here's the one we wrote with Shelly about IT careers, and it really explains your group in language that parents understand. You know, I kind of took my lens and tried to put on my parent hat. And so what would a parent want to know about this group, and what does it mean? And connected them to resources and why you're focusing on IT. So this is just an example of how Higher Pass can promote the efforts that your group is doing in the future. I just need communication with me and us to work together to make it work.
Yeah, call me. It's National Apprenticeship Week next week, so we could even help put something together that quickly.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, and I'll double check if we may have that on our calendar already.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'll check. Lots of things going on with Higher Pass, lots of content we're putting out. You know, we're still introducing people to us every day. It's amazing. I feel like people are sick of hearing about us, but most people still don't know what we are. But we're continuing to grow and expand, and certainly anything you all can do to help us would be awesome. And anything we can do to help promote your mission and goals, we'd love to do that.
Well, I'll say, Kristin, I've heard you, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 times. I am not sick of it. This is great, and the updates are great. A question, what do you think, based on the data you have so far, what might this look like a year from now, 2 years from now? It's a little crystal ball stuff, but kind of curious your point of view. And you can reserve your right to change your mind.
That's good. I was pretty excited when we reached that 1.2 million, and that's only with Facebook and Instagram. But so far, monitoring our analytics, about 95% of the people who are coming to us are learning about us through Facebook. That's just where parents spend most of their time at this point in time. Certainly we're monitoring, you know, people are like, are you going to get into TikTok? And, you know, we're looking at all those things over time. But right now the data shows we need to spend the bulk of our time and resources on Facebook for this audience. The 1.2 million was unique people we had touched. My hope is, you know, most people don't act until they've seen something 7, 8, 9, 10 times. So we're going to try to see how many of those 1.2 million people we can hit over and over. There's not even 3 million people in the state of Kansas. So the fact that we'd reached 1.2 million was pretty exciting when you consider all the ones who are younger than 25 and older than 55. So I'm hoping a year from now, we're just continuing to see those month over month website numbers grow. I also really hope that we can continue to build those educator links. I think that's a key way to get this in more kids' hands. You know, there's nothing that says a teacher on every Monday morning couldn't share another profile or put it on their Canvas page and encourage their kids to read it, depending on what they teach in their grade level, just to continue to get this information into more people's hands. But it's been pretty exciting. Every profile we put out is different. Some of them only, you know, end up with 50, 60 interactions. Some of them end up with 18,000 interactions. So every week we're reaching different numbers of people, and it just really depends on who else helps us share them. Shonda, I have met with Commerce Now, and it was Kansas Works, actually. They're supposed to be helping to share some of our content. But if it would be appropriate, feel free to follow us and share our content. It's up for grabs for anyone. The more people share it, the more people are going to see it, and it just allows us to stretch our dollars more. So again, it's on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Sometimes we have found that the LinkedIn ones, we get a lot less traffic, but they're often better traffic. Some of the users from LinkedIn actually spend more time on our site because we can see how long someone spends on the site who goes from one social media platform. A lot of times if someone just clicks to the website and reads the story and then leaves, it's like a minute. But sometimes with LinkedIn, they spend 3, 4, 5 minutes looking through the site. So, it makes it worth doing all the different platforms. Hope that answered your question, Alan.
It did. That's terrific. So questions, comments from the group here?
Yeah, this is Trent Armbrust. Kristin, thank you. And it's fun to see this grow. And I think it's amazing. One of the reasons we re-engaged was that we know for Advantage Kansas, for our efforts to be successful, we're going to have to do a similar type marketing effort in order for people to know that the career opportunities in computer science and IT are truly cross-industry, cross-sector, and businesses, but we don't have necessarily a lot of people understand what those career opportunities are. And so, I know in our Opportunity Kansas group, you spoke with us about doing some of that, but I think for the group as a whole, we're really going to have to focus on how we're going to find the resources to do some marketing so that our work can be successful. And so I appreciate you being on and being part of our conversations.
Sure. And one thing we did talk about in your group is trying to do a little bit more research as to why or why not kids are interested in IT fields, what they know, don't know, where the misperceptions are, misconceptions are, why we aren't seeing the numbers going into those fields that we need, just to help us figure out what points we need to be hitting upon in our messaging. And then moving forward too, I'm going to definitely be making an emphasis when I'm working with my big employers, like I'm doing robotics and Textron, and that's a great way to tie manufacturing and IT. So continuing to look for ways we can encourage that as well. But I think just working together and sharing ideas will just allow us to continue to build those opportunities and let us share them and make the best use of our dollars.
Other questions, comments, or thoughts that Kristin should hear from this group? Okay, so I always have questions. Do you know of other efforts like this across the country and how it compares? I don't know all the conversations you and I have had. I've never asked you that, so I'm just kind of curious.
I have not found anything specifically focused on parents. Maybe a few isolated like individual videos or put on by an educational institution, but not a full program multidisciplinary like this. One thing I didn't mention is, right now our focus is purely on Kansas. We're hoping as we are able to build up our budget that we can start promoting into all of our neighboring states as well, knowing that our employers don't just stop looking at the state line. We're already promoting on the Kansas City, Missouri side of the metro. We're looking at, Wichita's labor pool goes into northern Oklahoma. So starting to do more across the state border into that part of the state. So really starting to bleed into our neighboring states as well, just to promote Kansas jobs. So at this point in time, no, somebody I guess might steal my idea and run with it somewhere else. But right now, Higher Pass is the only one I know like this.
Alan, I do know I've got some notes somewhere that I'm going to have to go find.
Sure.
But I have seen some sites like this. They tend to work very well when they're regionally specific and they feature, regionally specific people and career paths. I know Utah has something along this line. I believe that Kentucky may as well. I know California does. Also, the target audience being parents is kind of the differentiator. I think that is really useful. But I wonder if there's a way to, reskin it to maybe also target, youth, or reskin it to target displaced workers or something along those lines.
I think right now the social media stories we put out, they don't say, hey, mom and dads only read this. I think someone who's 23 or 33 reads our stories, they may just get as much out of it. And I think you see that with our demographics. We are reaching other audiences as well. We
Mhm.
have looked at in the future trying to redo how we're approaching Instagram because we're not getting the numbers we want to see there to be more teenager focused. TikTok's a whole nother beast just because it uses so much more video. But if we get to the point where we're getting in the resources that we can afford to do that, we'd love to start expanding there as well. So it's kind of a game of as we grow, we can do more things. Those are all things we've talked about as additions as we move forward and get more of a following. There's no limit to what we could do.
Yeah, I think those are great ideas, Shonda, that we can repurpose, or you can, of course, you're a private entity that gets some other funding for other audiences, but obviously you're doing great work and appreciate your passion, your idea for it. So last chance for questions. We're 1 minute over, but this is very important. So
I just saw a billboard east of Goodland or Colby. So good job on the billboards.
Yep, there's 5 on I-70 and then 1 in Pittsburgh, 1 in Dodge City, and then 1 south of Wichita, and then 2 along I-35. So I think that's all of them. But nope, they're great. Hopefully they will start to find more people who are directly entering our address because they've seen it somewhere like that.
I was in Dodge City over the weekend for a wedding. I think I've seen all of your billboards in Pittsburgh. I've been in Pittsburgh and in Wichita a bunch, and I-70. So they certainly catch my attention. So great job. So now the next section with Kristin, you're welcome to attend the rest of it. You might be bored to death, but having you listen to it might be helpful, and you could give us some feedback about finalizing the strategic plan. Our goal is Shelley and I meet with the governor on November 22nd. So that's 14 days. And I want to be realistic that some of our recommendations of this committee may be, here's some things we still have to do. And I still have that in my committee about, we still have to get this data, but here's the direction we want to go. But first thing you see on the agenda is eliminating overlap or duplication. I think through private conversations, we've kind of done that. Like Higher Pass was in my committee, and we've shifted it over to Jumpstart, but supporting Higher Pass. But that's an example of what does that mean? Or is this committee going to recommend additional funding for it through general fund or KSDE or something else? I don't think we're going to figure that out on this call, but Cindy, you and I should probably should have talked about this before, but when we start to finalize this plan, we'll start with Jumpstart. So what additional info do you need? Where are you? And where are we headed towards the meeting with the governor?
Well, Alan, I'm not on that committee, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. See, all the committee names get confused in my mind. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Shelley was leading that work, but I don't know if there's anybody else with us today that's also on that committee that can give insight.
We'll go to Opportunity Kansas then, since you're on the screen.
Okay. Our committee is continuing to kind of refine. We still have 3 big ideas, one of which is the marketing piece that we think we need to figure out across all 3 signature initiatives together, not just for Opportunity Kansas, but we have the ideas that are focused on job creation, and then the other set of strategies focused on accelerating the talent pipeline. So we are refining our action steps and trying to come to consensus on the approach in terms of elevating and aligning the CTE and vocational programs around the cross-sector strategies that we've identified in IT. So we're in progress. We should be able to meet that timeline. I think, let me look a little closer. I think we had still wanted to have some conversation with the whole group about whether or not we wanted to approach the Spark committee for any funds in supporting this work. That's probably the heaviest lift of unknowns. our idea was to be able to provide grants to small businesses and those kinds of things where we need additional funding sources to do that. But I'm not sure that we have anything in our sections, Alan, that's duplicated now. We handed off free and reduced training that led to certifications in the cross-sector skills area to your committee.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that was the first thing on the duplication. Let's see. So so this is a still work in progress. We're going to get it done in the next 14 days. Yeah, we're going to we'll fill in the people responsible and the timeline of resources, et cetera. But that's also, Kristin, back to you on some of the things you need. Let us know on what you think this might look like in 2 or 3 years on some specific numbers and what we can do to, to promote that. Yeah. Anything else, Cindy?
No, I really think that's we just need to tighten up and refine a little bit. And I think we'll be ready to go.
Well, that's where we are with Talent Ready. I've struggled with the goals on increased registered apprenticeships. Shawna said doubling it, which makes sense to me. One thing I thought about is getting to the national median, which Shawna and I talked a little bit about that last week, which we need to follow up. Like, what is a realistic goal, but also a stretch goal? But we definitely need to improve those numbers. And doubling, we initially had going from 5,000 to 15,000, which is, I'd call that a stretch goal. But what are those numbers, and then how do we measure it? One of the challenges our group, which Ian Ma and I just became aware of this last week, was the workforce AID, which I was always industry aligned or workforce aligned with industry demand. I was always using that as a term of art. It is not a term of art. It's a very specific thing, like registered apprenticeships. So we're gonna have to readjust our goals there. And Mike is out for the week, so I've got to have a conversation with him about what that means, and including the workforce AID person. Where my view is, anybody can challenge this, including you, Shonda, which you and I talked about this, about registered apprenticeships versus apprenticeships,
Right?
Because the overall goal is we know where we're headed, where we want to go. Does it have to fit all these boxes? Which hopefully not. And that's the same thing with workforce AID. So I wish I had more information. I've got to get more. For all the couple of years I've been dealing with this, I didn't know that was a specific thing. So I'm exposing my ignorance there, and working with the Department of Commerce. The two other things that we got to get a little bit more meat on the bones is supporting JAG-K, which, anybody please speak up if you don't know what JAG-K is. Yeah, Kristin, I saw your hand raised.
I thought you were going to say if anybody knows what JAG-K is. I've got articles I could send.
JAG-K is awesome. I serve on the state board, and in our draft recommendations is to support expansion, where we are working on coming up with numbers and how do you fund it. Most of the funding comes through TANF, which is social welfare money from the federal government. So there's a bit of a political issue of, do you spend K-12, specifically K-12 appropriations, which I think we've all been very good about trying to avoid some of those difficult. No, we want to get things done. We're not trying to avoid difficult political issues, but if there's another way to solve it, we want to. And I'm a huge believer in JAG-K, and we're working on some language about metrics on number of students, number of specialists, and number of school districts that incorporate JAG-K. Similar, so I'm just telling you the things we still have to figure out is supporting WorkKeys. So the state supports ACT WorkKeys, and as Ann and I talked about earlier today, it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg, where businesses say, well, nobody's doing it, and so we're not going to value it. And then the ACT folks will say, but businesses don't want it. And I don't know how to bridge that gap yet, because the counties that are doing it, in Potawatomi, Labette, Cherokee, and Butler County come to mind, they've all embraced it and are doing great stuff with it. And so if it can work there, it can work in other states. but I both like JAG-K and ACT WorkKeys, I've not heard any opposition to it. It's like, well, how do we do it? And we're not going to figure this out in the next 14 days or whatever I said. But I think supporting that and trying to figure out how to promote it, I believe that the state is paying every student to take, yes, the ACT college prep, but also the ACT WorkKeys. And so how do we promote that through KSDE and students, and I'm sorry, and teachers, but also the businesses? And I need to reach out to ACT national organization of how this has worked in other states and how to promote it. But intuitively, it makes a ton of sense to me. Open to any ideas and thoughts there on either JAG-K or ACT WorkKeys. I feel like I'm missing a couple things, but go ahead if anybody has questions or suggestions.
Alan, I might jump in on both of those. So,
oh, great.
I'm a big believer in ACT WorkKeys, but I think maybe the best process that happens is when a county sets down with all of their employers and any higher ed and K-12 in that county and talks about the skills that are necessary then to impact employment in that region or in that county. If you end up going ACT WorkKeys in that county, what everyone has said is we'll provide you a base level of a skill set if you will agree to either interview or value within a dollar amount promotion, something along those lines. But the value is that collaboration, I think, between those two. And so, or at least it was for me when I was superintendent in McPherson County. Second thing about JAG, I'm a big proponent of JAG also, but here's the caution: is if there's not TANF or there is some funding, the cost per pupil, if you just extract it as the total dollars going into that, is pretty high if it ever had to come from one source. So that's the only caution. And I mean, it's not something I haven't talked to Chuck about, because I'm a big proponent. We're trying to work on how we can really move the needle from our 88% graduation and 50% post-secondary success toward 95 and 70. And I think JAG is a major component of that. But I know he's frustrated by trying to find the funding sources to make it happen. I'm just always cautious about, if you just look at the cost per student in the total model, if the state doesn't subsidize it in some way, right now it's kind of a balance. There's a state TANF money, there's a school district giving some money, and then there's some money that comes from I think some private sources. So that's all I had to say about that. And others may want to comment on that too, because I love it. They've got great success. They're doing remarkable things. So those are just my two.
No, that's a good point, Randy. And I think that that again, serving on the state board where we have raised some private money, and it's been somewhat successful, but the costs are. I understand what you're saying. The cost per pupil is high. To get it into a school district, easy for me to spend government money. Doesn't seem that high, but yes, it all adds up. And that may be, I don't know, I hate to create another subcommittee or something about what is the best way to target existing funds whose goal is to do what JAG-K does, and JAG-K has the success rate, whether it's including things like teenage pregnancy and juvenile justice issues that I've not heard one detractor of JAG-K yet. Detractor, that's a little overstatement, but yeah, we want to support it. We've got to figure out the right way. But Randy, your points are right on. And how is that best done? And there's some school districts are deciding on their own this is the best allocation of their resources. But we got 280 school districts. They're not all going to make the same decisions. So, I'd say for our committee, those are well, we have several challenges, but those are two. Support JAG-K, but what does that mean? And support ACT WorkKeys. How do we best do that? But I think, Randy, you're completely right about it. It has to be a local effort. You can't do it from Topeka or from ACT. You have to have those folks that buy in, and that's where it's been successful, right? In Butler County and Potawatomi County and Labette County and Cherokee County, in McPherson County, and you get the local folks bought in. One of our other areas is increasing industry recognized credentials. And one of our recommendations is going to be, unless I get outvoted, is to require, which I know Randy and Blake don't like mandates, but require better tracking of the existing IRCs being done. A lot easier for KSDE because they're not a lot happening, but we have some goals for increases, but it's kind of hard to figure out what those increases are if we don't know what they are today. And so I think Heather Morgan's on the call, and we've talked about this. Like, this is just in the institution's interest to start tracking those, because that's part of something they can talk to their students, employers, that we've increased these IRCs, with the caveat that these IRCs are things that are needed by industry. So we have some goals there. I've always been a little bit uncomfortable with the goals, and I was not uncomfortable at the beginning, got more uncomfortable as I understood we didn't have as much data, but the goals are aggressive, 50% increase, et cetera. We've got to nail those down. So I think the purpose for the meeting with the governor is, here are these things we need to increase. Everybody on this call and others have got to put some more thought into what are those rational or reasonable goals, whether they're, sorry to use these crazy corporate terms, stretch goals or simply goals of increasing. So,
Hey, Alan, I hate to interrupt, but
nope, go ahead.
I can't help but think, one of and I'm new to JAG-K, so I'm just learning a little bit about it. So I'm probably going to say something wrong at some point in time. But speaking of JAG-K or internships, apprenticeship, anything within that work-based learning spectrum, has there been any efforts made around some kind of ROI calculator to better speak to the advantages that these have specifically for businesses? You talk about JAG-K being expensive.
Well,
I'm just wondering.
I think those ROIs out there.
hang on.
I've not heard it being described as expensive until Randy mentioned it, but I can't say that I've looked at the per pupil cost. But yes, that is a great point, that we should be able to evaluate that. And is this the best return on investment for those things? So I think that's a fair point.
Well, that's horribly embarrassing.
Oh, no. No, these are great questions. Nothing embarrassing.
Well, I lost my microphone. So if you said anything, I didn't hear anything at all.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. But I'm just wondering, I part of being able to push these work-based learning models is being able to effectively talk about the importance they have for businesses and being able to translate that to a monetary value. I spoke a little bit with Mike Bean about it, but I wonder if there are some out there, but it would sure be nice to be able to have something specific for Kansas.
I think that's a great point. One thing I've focused on JAG-K, again, being on the board member of their graduation rates are so high for that demographic compared to others, which intuitively is a good thing. But what is the ROI? That's probably something that should be added, which is probably a little difficult to come up with, but not impossible, or a range. Randy, I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but I think that's a fair question.
I don't know that I have any specific, Alan. I am a big, again, proponent of JAG. I know I've talked to Chuck about, and really have reached out to some school districts about using some ESSER 3 money in areas where we really are lagging behind in graduation rates, to maybe use this and some other programming about mentorship to really target those kids that are not on track to graduate, or to earn something after high school. But it's this nice partnership, I think, between there is some state money going into it. The state money, I mean, directly, as you mentioned, TANF money. There's some private funding going into it, and there's some school district funding going into it. And when you have that balance, then when everyone looks at the cost of it, it's not bad. When you combine all those sources, though, and then look at that, and if that were ever shift to one entity, I know if it would shift to school-based, you'd see a drop in participation, which isn't what we want to see. So it's just figuring that out, because they do a terrific service and they are terrifically successful in what they do.
No, that again, all great. I agree with that, Randy. I think those are great points. And I sitting here thinking a little bit more detailed, Shonda, is there's obviously an ROI about high school graduates versus non-graduates. So there's a little bit there. How much can you attribute to JAG-K? Because the other thing, putting my amateur economist hat on, is JAG-K kids self-select. So these are all already people that are motivated to do something better, but yet they don't have the tools, and so they're looking for those tools. But I think we can come up with that. And like I've said this over and over, I know JAG-K's focus at risk because these are life skills and employable skills. Oh, plenty of middle class and upper middle class kids don't have these skills. But if we have to focus, let's focus on the lower income folks. But that, again, good point that we need to put a little bit more of a pencil to that. Last thing I had was on work-based learning. And Stacy may have to jump in here, where I think we've been noodling around and via email, not a conversation, unfortunately, about a request, or Randy, you jump in, a request to the legislature for, I would say, fairly modest funding increase based on the success that work-based learning has, with the caveat that Shonda just brought up about what's our ROI, which is very, very fair, to increase those pilot programs. I think the challenge in my mind is, if we think these work, which they appear to be working, what's the longer term? And I don't have great answers for that, but I think most folks are thinking the pilot programs are working. But Randy, you or Stacey, give us an update, and or someone else from your team. Probably missing some names I should remember. Natalie, I don't know if Natalie's on the call.
In my perspective, Alan, I mean, Wichita's been a great partner as Keith came on and helped us get a kind of a framework set up. And I think they're settling into what is now a good training model for the work-based learning intermediaries that are at the workforce development centers. I think COVID didn't help us out a whole lot. We've still got a lot to learn once everybody gets back out there. So I think you're right. I think having a good understanding of what we want the long-term investment to be and what the return on that investment is something that we still need some more brain power on. I think right now, when YEP and Camp Hype are really up and rolling and functioning, they can probably do close to 1,000 transition to workplace experiences through Textron, Spirit, other areas. I don't think that's something that we could put parameters on in Region 1 or probably in Region 2 or Region 5. If it comes down to Region 4 and Region 3 in the Kansas City Metro and Wichita, we could have that intensive route to the workplace through a Camp Hype or a YEP. I think eventually we want that ability for Region 1, Region 2, and Region 5 as well. And it might have to look a little bit different, right? In Wichita, they bring them all into one place, and they've got the training and the workforce. In Region 1, we might have to do a hybrid model where people can zoom in on a community college campus from Northwest Tech to Garden City to Dodge City, And then we bring them all together in one place. And I'm into the weeds immediately around this initial request, but for me.
Well, so Stacey, but the email exchange you and I had, we're talking about to the legislature, an additional $800,000.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have $800,000 in my savings account, but lots of easy to throw around money, but that seems pretty modest for a request.
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar to what Iowa's invested. We're spread out a little bit more in our community college system, but I think it's reasonable.
Alan, the Governor's Council on Education recommended to the Governor Kelly to include $714,000 of funding in her budget so we could support the growth of the intermediaries. And that committee also asked her to start talking to her team about how to have sustainable ongoing funding there. So at least at the governor's office level, she's aware that might be an area for you and Shelley to follow up on. Very supportive and trying to figure that out. And I think Commerce has it penciled in on their budget right now, but that's something.
Thank you for that reminder, which I serve on the Governor's Education Council, but missed most of last meeting. And Cindy and I haven't had a chance to catch up on where we're overlapping with this group or different things, but that's good. Good info. One other thing I just wanted to mention back on the ROI, which I think ROIs are important. And I'm a limited government free market guy. But it's like, what's the ROI on a public park? Never get it. There's certain things we just need to do, right? Mm-hmm. We need high school graduates with better skills and they're going to have a good life. So I just, ROI is very important. It helps make the case, but I just throw that out that some things are more difficult to measure, just things we need to do with public money. So, and even all the conversations I've had over the last couple of years with everybody on this committee, the dollars we're talking about are so modest, at least in my view. So I think that's all I had on Talent Ready. Again, lots of questions, some more details to get through. Requesting data on IRCs. IRCs are a challenge because there's a lot of companies that are doing private ones that we can't track. But yet those are important, but they're happening also through the private colleges and whether they're for-profit or nonprofit. And Matt Lindsay and I have talked, I don't know if Matt's on this call today, but he usually is. So that's, again, some outstanding questions, but I feel comfortable we're heading in the right direction for the next 14 days. Mentioned Jumpstart earlier, if post-secondary readiness and success. And I should know, Shelley's one of the co-chair, or Trent, are you a co-chair of that? I'm sorry, I talk to all of you guys all the time, and I cannot keep track of who's co-chair of what.
I think Shelley's doing that one without a co-chair.
Well, we can correspond via email, but the conversations, I mean, with the group here. So my thought is, and Ann and I talked about this earlier, she's on the call. I don't know that we're in complete agreement, but my thought is for the purposes of this document is come up with the goals of the Advantage Kansas Coordinating Council and the subcommittees. Well, I want to throw this out. Do we need to have the subcommittee goals, or my view is have the goals of the committee? And here are the subcommittees that came up with these. Now, I don't have a strong opinion about that. Does that make some sense where here's our eight goals, 6 goals, 4 goals, 9 goals. And here are the subcommittees and who was part of it that came up with it, whoever's going to read the document. Because I don't know that it matters that Jumpstart came up with this versus Talent Ready versus Opportunity Kansas, but I can be dissuaded from that. That was just a thought that Shelley and I talked about a couple of weeks ago or a week ago.
Alan, I agree with that. I don't think anybody needs to know which subcommittee came up with it. It's not important. It's what comes out of Advantage Kansas is important. Alan, I got another question on the goals.
Sure.
One of the reasons we picked a specific area and we picked computer science and IT was to make it so our first efforts were manageable efforts. And so I'm wondering, when we have some of these goals, we're talking about huge changes like tracking all the industry recognized credentials, or do we need to stay focused on computer science and IT and just focus on tracking those credentials?
Yes.
And on the
Yes, we
apprenticeships,
do.
how many apprenticeships are we creating in the IT and computer science area instead of trying to do the whole thing from an Advantage Kansas, realizing we've got more work in the future and we'll keep adding to it?
Yes, we do. And thanks for that reminder. Again, I can always get off track on that, where it becomes more manageable and we can use that as a template for moving forward. We just don't want to, wait a year to figure out IT before we move to healthcare or manufacturing. But yes, good reminder where our goals need to be all focused on IT with, it's not an asterisk, but to let whoever's reading this document know, including the governor, that this is our template for moving forward in under other industries, whether they're cross-sectional skills or very specific like healthcare manufacturing. So yes, good reminder about that. And Shawna and I talked a little bit about that last week on registered apprenticeships for IT. And then IRCs with CompTIA can help us with all. I had no idea there's so many IRCs in IT, which I don't know what any of those acronyms mean, but people in that field know what it means. But that's a good reminder, because I get off track on that frequently on all these efforts. So the next thing, I'm gonna jump ahead. I'm way ahead, but we can always go back. Is plan for deliberate comprehensive assessment of resources. That's a request that is coming out of Talent Ready, and I'm not sure who to make the request to. Ann and I were talking about this, and I don't think it's an existential or fundamental thing, but can we get a current inventory of all the resources being spent on this, whether they're federal, state, local, or federal, local, state, or federal? I think that would be helpful. I don't think we have to have this info before we move forward, but one of the things I've discovered in the couple of years or 2 or 3 years I've been doing this, that there's a lot of great stuff going on, but it's not coordinated. We don't exactly know the resources, because you do have buckets. Certain federal money cannot be spent on anything else but what they allocate to the state, or one instance in Manhattan about that local workforce center. So this is, again, not something I don't think we're going to have figured out in 14 days, but getting that comprehensive list of resources and what should that look like, whether that should be increased, highly unlikely it should be decreased, but should they be reallocated with the ability that we have, where some things cannot be reallocated because this is what the federal government says, but open to any and all thoughts about that. And since Stacy's in my screen, he deals with this. I don't know if you have ideas about how best to get that data. Stacy, there's a question to you. You're probably multitasking.
Well, I'm thinking, I mean, it is tough to get. I mean, the best data that we probably have reports to us through the National Clearinghouse. We just can't get IRCs through that avenue.
Well, and I want to say that I've been a little frustrated that we don't have baseline data. Frustrated is a little overstatement, but that doesn't mean we don't want to move forward and increase what we're doing, because obviously we have challenges. So I don't want to, the whole cliche about perfect versus the good and all that kind of stuff, but it does help to have some baseline where we know. But that may be another legislative research. Actually, that probably is. Probably didn't include that in our initial legislative research request, but so I'm looking in the chat, making sure I didn't miss something.
Yeah, I mean, what about the eligible training provider system? I realize they're not going to be. I mean, there's credentials that are going to be on both the IRC list and the ETPS list, and some that are just going to be on ETPS. This is where my knowledge of how the Kansas system works is a little fuzzy, but I would imagine we'd be able to get at least some baseline information out of that. Am I
Alan,
off
this is
base
Heather.
here?
Yeah, go ahead, Heather.
I go back to the only way you're going to get the industry recognized credentials that are coming through the education system versus this private system is if the schools are required to report on them. Period. There is no place
No,
where it's all being logged.
I agree. That's going to be in our recommendation, which you and I have talked about it, where it shouldn't be a big deal, but nobody likes being told what to do. But yes, we need to add that for sure. So that will be part of the recommendation. But let me go back to, I'm kind of questioning, do we need to know what I think we do, but I want to hear what people's thoughts are about, do we need to know where we are today on how much the comprehensive assessment of resources? It would seem to me to make sense. And I'm sorry, so Shonda, explain a little bit more about ETPS.
Well, okay, so my brain's kind of going in several directions. If you're wanting just baseline information, my experience with like MZ or Burning Glass, some of those economic modeling online data platforms, if anybody's heard of them before, they're pretty widely used with economic development agencies. I can go in if I can get access to one, which I've asked Mike for access. I mean, we can pull some data out of those systems. They're housed by a national provider, and then the provider basically pulls BLS data, Bureau of Labor Statistics data, and then they have these spiders that go out into the web world and pulls in and gleans information on job postings. They glean information on any kind of IRCs attainments that are at least publicly available. And it will spit you out a skills gap, which will give you the top 100. It's like the certificate skills gap, or the top 100 list of certificates being required by employers. Whether that is totally accurate, is a little bit of a question, but I do know that it is typically fairly well regarded as quality data. And that could at least give us a baseline to start from. I don't know that long term, that's where we want to always, adhere to, because it is hard to sort of track our own progression. ETPS is the eligible trainer provider system. It's the system that is required by WIOA. So if you go after any kind of workforce funds, for unemployment or whatever, and you're wanting to use workforce investment funds, your training provider or training process or whatever needs to be WIOA, needs to be ETPS approved. A lot of times for ETPS approval, you need to have IRC approval, right? So the credential is approved, and then the training provider is approved, and then you can use taxpayer funds, for your workforce needs. So I'm just saying we do have some systems out there that we can be gleaning some data, but it is going to take a little bit of nuance to fit it all together.
Yet a new acronym I'm learning today. But that's okay. It sounds like a great resource. I'll probably jump around a little. No, go ahead. Whoever was speaking up, Stacy. Go ahead.
That was me, Alan. I would say that right now the Excel and CTE credentials, the really big ones that we're interested in pushing, are recognized in the school post-secondary success measures, and so when districts report them, they have an impact. And I think that's probably as good an incentive as you're going to get on a CNA and an AWS for getting them registered and logged into the system. Making it a requirement is pretty hard when a lot of those credentials happen outside of the school. The school almost has to be an investigator to find out if the student has earned them, if they're taking that through, say, for example, the retirement center within the community, and they're taking it during the summer. it might be visible through the community college, but not necessarily through the high school. So I hadn't mentioned the post-secondary success list, and I think we are gleaning a lot of those. It's probably the best list that we have.
Yeah, good point. Again, jumping around way ahead, but so our next meeting is December 13th, but what updates or requests from each work group by December 13th, but Shelley and I are meeting with the governor on the 22nd. There's no magic date about that. I mean, we're going to meet with her because we have it scheduled, and her schedule is more challenging than Shelley and I about maybe additional things where she comes out and endorses everything we want to do. And my guess is I wouldn't say a lot of caveats, but here's the direction we want to go with the Advantage Kansas Coordinating Council. Here are the very specifics we think. Here's some things that we think we want to go, but we got to get some more data and lean on Cindy, who always has a great point of view about this stuff. Oh, one last thing, because I'm going to forget about it. On the Governor's Education Council a couple of weeks ago, there was controversy or conversation about shifting the 0.5 CTE to a high wage, high demand, which I believe my committee supports. I think Cindy's supports it, but the Governor's Education Council had a little bit more hesitation because of the politics of opening up the school finance formula in an election year, et cetera. Mark Tassetti from KNA brought that up. I have not talked to him. You guys might be surprised, but I consider him a friend. So I don't know where that political point of view is coming from, but I think that's something this is definitely in alignment with the entire things we're doing with Advantage Kansas Coordinating Council. And I think it could be politically managed, where go to the House and Senate leadership of both parties said, hey, we want to change this. I hope I'm not naive about that, but wanted to bring that up for the discussion of this group because it was a bit of a discussion. Cindy, I don't know, was that 3 weeks ago or whatever it was?
Yeah. We went ahead and advanced the draft white paper that you all have seen to the Governor's Council and others to get feedback. I think most folks are thinking that our first move should be to adjust the Perkins plan, not the tiered funding for CTE. So start with the Perkins plan, work with TEA to make sure that we truly are aligning to the high wage, high demand, critical need jobs, and take it that way, Alan. So I'll send you the latest white paper that the committee is working on. We haven't had a meeting since that's been reshaped, but we've gone back and forth via email. And I think folks are feeling, rather than to take on the changing the funding as a first step, that we'd be better off looking at the Perkins plan and working through those processes.
Hey,
well, and the truth is that funding is to go to technical classes and advanced classes in the career paths. And those career paths are only supposed to be high wage, high demand jobs. So we should already be there. Now, I know that hasn't always been updated every year, but that's the idea of where the .5 funding was supposed to go anyway. But since we're only starting with IT, I think it's way premature to talk about redoing that formula, because eventually we want to support all the high wage jobs, not just IT. So making a shift in that funding right now could really mess some stuff up, I think.
So then that kind of rationale, I think, Alan, led us to believe that maybe we're getting in front of ourselves and we should do some of these other alignments.
Hey, that's fine by me. It's like, however we solve the problem, let's solve it.
There's a lot of flexibility in the Perkins 5 language that does include the in-demand occupations. So it will take a little bit of processing and stakeholder engagement before you can get the documents together for public comment and getting them through the process. So to reaffirm what Ann was kind of mentioning, if we do want to align with high skill, high wage, we can certainly do that. That's our prerogative as a state. There will be some pushback from some of the organized groups, but that can all be managed over time. If this committee decides that's what we're going to do.
Well, great. I'm glad I brought it up because I hadn't had a chance to talk to all the conversation I had with Cindy and Ann. We haven't really talked about this. But yeah, if there's another way to solve, again, the how to solve the problem or the issue, we can do it a number of different ways. So I'm glad I brought that up. So that's helpful. So I will, Shelley or I or both will follow up with, I think, I feel like my committee, Ann and I's committee, are a little behind, but we still have some time that about all these the specific requests. And again, some of them are going to be data requests, like as Heather mentioned, the IRCs and what are we doing now? And let's take a look at what we should be doing, or make a stab at a goal for an increase of it. I feel like I'm missing a few things, but anybody, the floor is open. We can discuss KUK State game if you want.
I would just like to say something. This is Jean Clifford.
Thanks, Shane.
On that high wage, high demand, it should be high wage and high demand and in Kansas, because the whole point of this is to grow the Kansas economy, not to grow the Missouri economy or somebody else's. So I just want to keep that focus.
That's a good point on Kansas. One thing on the high wage, high demand, which I think that's still the right term as opposed to growth, where I guess I speak to the aerospace companies a lot, that their growth is not necessarily going to increase much, but it's still high wage, high demand. And they have replacement issues where the growth is happening in small companies. It's not happening at the big companies, but yet replacing those engineers or machinists at whether they're a subcontractor or not. But yes, I guess that's intuitive about Kansas, Gene, but that's a good point that we should remind ourselves. But I think high wage, high demand captures it, but open to semantic changes there, but definitely about Kansas for sure. Well, nobody wants to talk about the KUK State game, I guess. And I'm loyal to neither. Okay, I'm looking at the folks on the list here who I'm going to call out. Okay, Zach from the governor's office. Tell us what we're missing or what additional info you need from us. And I'm probably being very unfair by calling him out, but he's part of the administration, so it's important that we hear from him, or we can schedule a different call.
Nope, that's okay. I think you keep touching on it, Alan, is getting as much as we can before that meeting that you guys have scheduled in about 2 weeks. I'll go through some of what's in the report and pull some of those pieces for the governor so that she is at least kept up to date on what each committee is working on. But my call is just to keep moving forward on what the strategic plan has been. So I have nothing specific to add.
Well, and of course, Zach, reach out to any of us individually. It's going to be more difficult in the group setting about, hey, what did you think about this? Or I'm not really sure about some of the things you heard. So obviously you should feel comfortable about doing that for anybody on the call. So that's all good, but thanks for joining. Obviously still work to be done, but it's something beyond slow. It's not slow, but sure, but we're beyond slow, but we're not exactly moving fast, but I think we're making some progress. At least that's my point of view. And I'll just say, having been around this a little bit, but kind of knew, wish these conversations would have happened 15 years ago, but they didn't. That's the way it is. Nothing we can do about it now. And maybe they did, and they didn't reach fruition for some of you folks that have been around this longer than I have. Well, that's all I had. Shawna, again, welcome aboard to the Kansas team, and appreciate everybody's involvement and work. I know everybody's working hard on this and putting a lot of brain power, among other things, into this effort. So it's much appreciated. I know I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.